Imagine you're in school for 6 hours, you're immersed in another language that you don't know, and on top of that, you're expected to be learning math or history or science. It's really important for everybody to understand that task before English learners and to give them as much support as they can.
At EL Education, we are tirelessly pursuing and trying to promote equity. We have built the curriculum thinking about English language learners being part of it as opposed to separated from it.
The curriculum hands to teachers, almost on a silver platter, a way to invite kids of all backgrounds into a conversation and invite all kids into learning.
One of our guiding principles was to think about 8 high leverage approaches to supporting English language learners, to make sure that students had the same access to complex texts and to communicate in writing and speaking in the same ways that other students do as well.
Really looking at language deeply. And this is one of the reasons we coined the term language dive, because you're diving into language.
Very interesting. All right, friends, are you ready to dive deep?
Yes.
Let's do it.
Allow students that opportunity to pause for a moment in their day and have a rich conversation about a single sentence from a complex text.
He flew straight to the window, but the window was closed, and there were bars on it.
For my English language learners, I learned that they can easily get bogged down if they don't know the meaning of one word, and then that can throw off the rest of the sentence, and it's completely unnecessary. Through language dives, I've learned to separate it into chunks. All growing up, they're able to step back from the words. They're able to think about the actual structure and the role that the words play. Can you reverse the order?
You can reverse the order because
let students just play with sentences and really understand why authors use the words that they use.
Why did the author include the preposition as?
it connects the first chunk to the second chunk to make it.
It is not teachers telling kids what strong grammar looks like. It's kids playing with a sentence and learning for themselves how language works.
Peter was like, ew.
We take a sentence from the text we're already reading, we analyze the sentence with several different ways, through sketches, through acting, through words, and then we let that dive live on the walls so that the students can pull from it later. So that last step of the students being able to apply what they're learning, now with language dives, I can actually see it make an impact on their writing. Students can learn, okay, this is my model, and now how can I turn my writing into beautiful writing like that author?
What more could you ask of an educator right now than to train kids in this climate that we live in to listen to one another and then to have a true conversation back and forth? And that's exactly what conversation cues do. Conversation cues have been one of the single most important drivers of equity at all grade levels in all subjects.
How would you find the area? The area is...
So a Spanish teacher can use conversation cues, a PE teacher can use them, a math teacher can do them.
Coefficient, can you tell us a little bit more about using the coefficient, Carlos?
Because it drives at that core belief that all students have something important to say.
I have a question for you. Could you say that Tinkerbell was mean because was she mean actually the whole entire story, or was she mean like in certain little bits of the story?
And so it starts off very simply as sentence frames that help English language learners learn how to simply just say one sentence and get comfortable. And then they progress to higher level goals and getting kids to speak even more and interact with one another in conversation.
Yeah, McCall, right? Amber, there's 13 comments. You can say it in their own words.
If a child is brand new to English, there's a lot of support that a child will need. I have seen newly arrived students be involved in a language dive, not in a verbal way. Now that doesn't mean the newcomer isn't getting anything. They're getting something that is very context specific, before the language dive begins, show them some pictures, whatever it is that helps to set the context. Content-based learning is so good for English learners because there's context. But as a child becomes more and more familiar with English, pull back the supports. They need to begin to make sense for themselves, how this language works, try it out themselves, grapple.
Teachers can look at the levels of support that are written into the curriculum and intentionally choose what's going to work best for their kids. I can see some of our kids who were having their teachers expose them to some of the heavier supports not needing that anymore and just using the lighter supports or even no supports at all and being the ones that are talking the most.
What I'm most proud of is how they take risk though. My English language learners are not afraid to make mistakes with language now because they recognize that mistakes are a part of how we learn and a part of the process of sorting out language.
You start removing some of the support and allowing them to become more active participants in the language dives, in the conversation cues,
Or the American.
and allowing them to take the lead in their own learning.
I do agree because I am a shy girl. I agree because as the war started. What it feels to take a risk in the language dive. It feels nerve-wracking. Talking with a partner first gives me the confidence to talk with like 20 or 30 other students. They didn't start because they didn't want the T to be taxed. They wanted to fight for the rights of English people and for them.
They then are able to move through these different stages of language development.
In schools today, as you see in the country, it's possible to be incredibly diverse, but to not be inclusive. And what I love about this curriculum is that it helps our diverse school community teach and talk about inclusivity directly, whether that be looking at something from our historical past, such as the American Revolution, what it would have been like to be a patriot versus a loyalist versus a Quaker versus a Native American, and the different viewpoints they would have had about that war. So what I love is the intentionality that the curriculum has in terms of honoring different perspectives, but then also allowing the students' voice to talk about their own perspective.
To be as adventurous as an immigrant.
As adventurous as an immigrant.
I get it what she said about the adventures about Peter Pan and how are they similar. Like the immigrants, like you said. I get what he's saying because immigrants, they came from different countries. He meant like, for example, if I lived all the way in Europe and I came all the way to North America, that would be adventurous. Peter is adventurous? Yes. Right. So immigrants are adventurous people. I didn't even think of that.
And it's promoted so much equity in terms of student voice in the classroom.
Do you know what beliefs is in Spanish? Creo? Creo. I also encourage my ELLs to speak to one another in Spanish. We have a conversation cues poster that's completely written in Spanish for them to refer to, and it has sentence starters for them as well.
Children who are able to maintain the home language and add English, those languages serve as supports for academic learning. Language is so intimately tied with a sense of identity. And in order for children to be successful learners, they have to have a strong sense of self. Interact with the families. Bring whatever it is that you have come to know with the families into the classroom so that the children see themselves represented. And just as importantly, the children who are not from that culture will come to learn something, and that makes for a more peaceful school.